You're listening to the Jay Bird Watching Podcast, the official podcast of jaysjournal.com and fansite.com. We are the official ballroom chat for everything Toronto Blue Jays baseball, from game highlights to rumors and all the stuff in between. Here's your host, Craig Borden, with co-hosts Jason Lyons and Liz McGuire. Now let's talk some Toronto Blue Jays baseball.
Good evening, Blue Jays fans, and thank you very much for tuning in already. I see plenty of you in the chat. We are very happy to have you at our random special time of an hour later this evening, but it's almost baseball season. We have a very special guest with us. We'll get there in 2 seconds, but I am your host, Craig Borden. With me, as always, is Liz McGuire and Jason Lyons. How the hell are you two doing?
I'm really good. I'm excited for baseball. That's pretty much it, man. Like, I don't really try to spend too much time on spring training. I know maybe people would say that's insane, but I get really invested in it. And so I'll watch the first half and I'll kind of breeze through the rest. But I get so upset when we lose. It's like,
especially with a 11-8 jobber today, but that's besides the point. So anyways, Jason, how the hell are you, bud?
Oh, it's baseball stuff. Like, I'm just, it's so fun to have it back and see all kinds of crazy stuff happening and people having massive games and, players that have been traded or forgotten about seem to be there's just a host of them having good, big spring trainings and, guys challenging for the Jays lineup. And it's fun. It's one of the more fun parts of the season when you start to see guys like I'm going to see a bunch of these guys in Vancouver and, it's cool to see them there. And then when we go see them, we'll have at least some sort of an association with them, knowing a little bit about them. But yeah, baseball stuff. It's so much fun.
I love that.
Deal.
Well said.
So, and as far as deep stats go, we have a very special guest that has one of the more fun Twitter follows I've found in a long time. Thank you, Liz, for making sure you hooked us up here with Not Gaetti. How we doing, buddy?
Hey guys, excited to be here.
Do you have a random obscure one you want to start the show off with here? Because, like I said, we've enjoyed watching the weird, fun stats that you have for all Major League Baseball. So let's get into the fun, man.
Yeah, sure. So as you guys know, I do the NEPTA series. Not enough people talk about. And the thing about NEPTA is it doesn't discriminate by team, by position, right? There's hitters, there's pitchers. Honestly, it doesn't even discriminate against whether somebody already has a plaque in Cooperstown or not. I think there are Hall of Famers that remain tremendously underrated. Guys like Frank Robinson, Stan Musial, guys with real inner circle numbers who nobody would dispute are still somewhat underrated because as good as they were, you don't really hear their names come up when people talk about Mount Rushmore or like real inner circle guys. So NEPTA spans the role players, Luis Sojo, I think, who won something like 4 World Series rings despite being a light-hitting middle infielder, all the way up to the Stan Musials of the world. They're in there. And when I knew that I was going to have the chance to chat with you guys, I wanted to go through and see, what were the Blue Jays looking like? At this point, I've done about 250 of these posts going back to about, I think it started like Christmas of 2023. And it turns out the second NEPTA post ever was a guy named Carlos Delgado. I don't know if you've ever heard of Carlos Delgado.
He's new. He's new, apparently.
He's new. Okay, so somebody was selling 10 Carlos Delgado baseballs on the internet for $100 for the whole thing of 10 in Hamilton, which is about an hour a bit away. And I was like, I got to get these baseballs. But then I was like, what am I going to do with 10 Carlos Delgado baseballs? And then it became a whole thing, and I chickened out. But I will say this. If anybody sees a blonde, fine-looking thing walking around town in a Carlos Delgado player shirt from like 20 years ago, it's probably me.
Just saying. But give us what'd you find on Delgado? Because obviously, being a monster Blue Jay fan, we loved Carlos Delgado, and honestly, wish we could have won something with Carlos Delgado.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he had one of the greatest individual seasons ever in 2000 when he hit 344 and just was a run producer. His biggest problem was that he overlapped with peak steroid era where you had guys really putting up these superhuman numbers, and also that he had some of his best years in Toronto. I'm from the New York area. I'm a New York fan. My family's always pulled for the Yankees and Mets both. And so when Delgado came to the Mets, like, people were excited. We knew down here what a great player he was. And I remember people thinking, like, how did he make so few all-star teams while he was putting up these huge numbers? And, he was like a pretty beloved player everywhere that he played. And if you look at his career numbers, 473 home runs is like, it puts him right in Willie Stargell territory, right? I mean, he's right there. Drove in a ton of runs and just was one of the most prolific power hitters of his day. Had a 4-homer game. And if you watch clips of him hitting, it's like he's one of those guys where when he hits the ball, it stays hit. Like, just one of the top guys of his day. And it was just, I think, this perfect storm of playing in a smaller market for his best seasons, not really, winning with Toronto during those years. And then just not hanging on quite long enough to reach 500 homers. I think if that happened, he's a Hall of Famer without question. But instead, to just fall off the ballot despite the numbers he put up, I just think that's a travesty. And, people really should remember and talk about some of those great years that he had.
I find it interesting that
watching him get nailed like 1 year on the ballot and didn't make 5%.
Yeah,
that was the insult.
I find it interesting. Some of those, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of this, but some of the more, I don't even know if the right word is obscure. I mean, it's some of the off-market teams like the Jays, like the Diamondbacks, the Mariners. Do you find that there's more guys that are in those, that have played on those teams that have more of the more obscure and sort of like where you look back and you're like, oh my God, like that guy was unbelievable, but yet he was buried, with the Angels and, pick your poison on another terrible team.
So sometimes that's absolutely the case. Take a guy like Tim Salmon, who put up tremendous numbers, had an 884 career OPS, 299 homers. Turns out Tim Salmon is the all-time home run leader among guys that never made an all-star team. Not one.
Now there's a deep cut. There's the deep cut.
He played his entire career for the Angels, which included, by the way, the California Angels, the Anaheim Angels, and the Los Angeles Angels. He played for all three. And, is like synonymous with the franchise, and yet never made an all-star team. So he's a guy that was buried by his market. As far as some of these other teams, like the expansion teams, guys that played for the Devil Rays, the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, usually it's not guys that were mired there, but players who were journeymen that wound up there. And because they maybe didn't have such an association with one team, they were penalized for that. My personal favorite of all time, former Blue Jay, by the way, Fred McGriff.
The crime dog.
Crime dog.
And he only recently got into the Hall of Fame on the Era Committee ballot. And I think his biggest problem was that he was so splintered across different teams in terms of where people associate him, right? So he came up with the Blue Jays, had some of his best years there, went to San Diego, won a home run title there as their everyday cleanup hitter, went to Atlanta, finally won a World Series there, went to the Devil Rays in Tampa, where he was from. So he's like a hometown guy, but he's sort of on the back stretch of his career. They were a terrible team. He eventually goes to the Cubs, has one of his characteristic 30 homer, 100 ribby seasons there a couple times. By the end of his career, he has as many home runs as Lou Gehrig, and he's beloved by these little pockets of people all over the country, but wasn't quite enough to galvanize, sufficient support to put him into the Hall of Fame on the writer's ballot. So he hung on for 10 years, fell off, and didn't get in until the Era Committee revisited his candidacy in, I think, 2023.
And to that point, I just don't understand why he was never considered more than that. The 497 career home runs itself, in my opinion, was enough to be able to be like, here's your front person on your ballot. But what do I know?
And he hit 10 more in the postseason. So You add it all up,
Yeah.
and he was over 500 anyway.
I feel like
He's in the postseason.
I feel like the root of this, the Hall of Fame conversation. I mean, and we could do 10 shows on this. I feel like the root of the issue of there's a lot of people in the MLB Hall of Fame that shouldn't be there, and there's lots that aren't there. I mean, the list of names that aren't there is ridiculous. Now like we look at gambling and all these things that people were held out for, and then you go to the stadium and there's ads for Bet365 every single 4 feet you go. Like, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Like Shane Pinto last year with the Ottawa Senators gets suspended for 70 games for gambling. The picture of the game before he got suspended, they have a gambling thing on the helmet of the Ottawa Senators, and yet this kid gets suspended for 70 games. So I mean, I think this is cool to me because a lot of the talks that I have with my friends about these things are exactly what you're bringing up, which is so cool. And I'm hoping that we can get some of the I haven't even looked. Oh my God, the comments are flying already. So good.
They're flying all over the place.
And there are a couple of guys in particular that I do think have very compelling Hall of Fame cases that are former Blue Jays that were featured on NEPTA. On the pitching side, I think David Cohn and Dave Stieb both were just so underrated. They didn't get the volume of wins, but they were such big game pitchers and so dominant. Stieb for the second half of the 80s, it seemed like he was taking a no-hitter into the ninth inning every start, and in fact, he did it in consecutive starts. And then I think he finally threw one in 1990, but
it was the third game. It's the only Blue Jay no-hitter to this day.
It's crazy. I mean, and we have some interesting Blue Jay one-offs too. Like he's got the only no-hitter, and Jeff Fry has the only home cycle at Skydome or Rogers Center or whatever you all want to call it these days. Are you nostalgic for Skydome? Because I am.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Great name for a stadium too.
Yeah.
The Skydome. It sounds like the future.
It is.
Well,
it is the future.
In 1989, it was the future. Then listen, on the hitter side, guys that I feel very strongly about are John Olerud and Joe Carter. Here's the thing about Joe Carter. It's the Hall of Fame, right? Like fame. And he had sort of the most iconic World Series moment of the last however many decades.
It's the only walk-off.
Ended
one of two.
Series.
One of two.
Yeah, in baseball history, right? Now, more and more, I think you see people viewing Hall of Fame candidacies through the analytics lens, right? And looking at more different modern metrics, which is a double-edged sword because on one hand, that helps guys like Scott Rowland, who maybe were not very flashy, but were extremely well-rounded and great at his job, right? Hitting, defense, all of it. He didn't put up the big eye-popping numbers, but revisiting things like WAR and fielding runs and all of this and defensive runs saved, that helped get Scott Rowland over the hump, I think. It is having the opposite effect on Joe Carter, who had 396 homers, drove in over 1,400 runs, but is only good for 19 and a half WAR career. And that's because he hit into a lot of outs, right? His job, the thing he was called on to do was go up there and swing with runners on base. Swing early, swing often, get guys to come around and touch home plate. That was it. That was his job, and he tried to do it to the best of his ability. When you put a lot of balls in play, you wind up hitting into a lot of outs. He did not draw a lot of walks because that wasn't his job, right? A walk with a runner on third and 2 outs doesn't change the number on the scoreboard. So he's also a victim of the positional adjustment, right? Played some first base, some corner outfield, some DH. But what people forget about Joe Carter, besides the iconic homer, is this is a guy who had a 200 hit season, a 30-30 season, and he actually had more 100 RBI seasons than any non-steroid guy not in the Hall of Fame. He had something like 10 100 RBI seasons and just missed an 11th one by 2. 10 100 RBI seasons.
Whoa.
Who does that? Nobody does
Carlos
that.
Delgado.
Like,
That's it.
he's so undersold these days as a big-time run producer, who also has this famous, iconic World Series ending moment. Like, even outside of Toronto, I can't picture any real baseball fan anywhere being upset if they showed up in Cooperstown and there's a Joe Carter plaque on the wall. Joe Carter's moment, his career, is the kind of thing that place was built to celebrate. But 19 and a half WAR, and you have all these people, really minimizing his entire body of work.
We'll say the celebration is in Cooperstown. There is a hole in the Blue Jays locker that they have in Cooperstown. They have his bat that he hit the home run with, and then there's a picture of him doing the fist pump, running around first base, touching them all. But to your point, that's only a piece of it.
Can we agree that was a terrible celebration? Like his run to first base was possibly the worst. Like if you go back and look at some walk-offs, and there's been some good ones, like the Kirk Gibson one, I think, as far as cool. No, well, he rounds first and he's giving it the fist pump, but he's like, yeah, I kind of knew that was going to happen. Where Joe Carter's like halfway through a cartwheel, he's not sure if he's going to high five somebody. He's got no idea. He's like, I don't even know where to go. Am I supposed to stand here? Am I doing this? What am I doing? Are we doing this? Or are we doing the safety dance? What are we doing? Yeah. I don't know what to do with my hands.
On one hand, you're 1,000% right. On the other hand, I kind of enjoy that it comes from this spirit of like, he's just as awestruck as the rest of us. Like, we're invited to be as confused and childlike as he is in that moment.
I think I saw the only time I saw it was, even in this year was that Freddie Freeman home run. Freddie Freeman hits that thing, and the look on his face, and he looks back at his kid behind home plate, and it's just like, that is so cool. Like, I mean, just the whole thing. Like, you've got what's his name in Philadelphia who's had that moment too.
Nick Castellano.
Yeah. It's just cool stuff like that you're never gonna, you'll never. It's just cool, super cool.
But why? Like, that's the thing is, like, what is the thing about? So I just straight up don't know this. What is the thing about people not getting the ballot on the Hall of Fame and then they never come back and get it again?
You fall off the ballot if you don't get 5% of the vote. So you need 75% to get in. You need 5% to survive to the next year's ballot. So, if somebody comes on the ballot in a very loaded year, those are usually the ones where you see somebody fall short of 5% and then not have an opportunity to get back until the era committee.
Yeah.
And so I had done a post actually about all of the Hall of Fame one and dones, guys who got less than 5% in their very first year. And it's just Olerud's on that list. Cone is on that list. Delgado's on that list. These guys didn't even see a second ballot. And
Delgado, John Olerud got 0.7%.
0.7%. The guy had 500 doubles. He hit 295 lifetime. He almost had a 400 OBP. And here's a fun John Olerud fact. He holds the single season batting average record for 2 different teams.
Yeah.
Whoa.
No shit.
Awesome.
Blue Jays, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Is the Mariners the other one?
The
Nope.
Mets.
The Mets.
Yeah.
So Olerud,
he had a good year with the Mets.
Yeah.
That year at the Mariners lost Griffey. He was one of the guys that they added that year with Ichiro, and they had the best record in baseball. He had a pretty damn good year there in 01 too.
Yeah. He went to the Mariners in 2000. He was with the Mets 3 years, 97 to 99. And I think it was 98 that he hit 354, which is still the Mets record. And then, as you guys well know, it was 1993 that he hit 363 to set the Blue Jays record. So, look, nobody talks about him. And he got less than 1% of the Hall of Fame vote. But this is a guy who had 500 doubles, is like a batting average king for 2 different franchises, and he skipped the minor leagues. He went straight from college to the big leagues. He did not play his first game in the minors until his final season in professional baseball at age 36.
And I don't know if you guys saw this or not. There's been some John Olerud talk out in the internet, in the interwebs, and he Olerud said the story he gets often or asked most about was playing with Ricky Henderson. And I don't know if you guys know this or not. The one where he's with Ricky, and he's talking to him, and he says something about him wearing the hard helmet at first base, and he's like, yeah, I had a brain aneurysm, I had to have a surgery, and he goes, yeah, it's the same as a guy I played with in New York, and he's like, Ricky, that was me, like
Phil, we were there.
And let's be clear.
Dustin Pedroia's name.
You as to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, to walk into the building, you should be forced to watch John Olerud
take a hit
and just be like, that's it. That's the swing that should be in the Hall of Fame. It's unbelievable.
Is it prettier than Griffey's?
Yeah.
Nothing's prettier than Griffey's, but it's damn close.
Okay. All right.
So I have a trivia question in our chat that I have to get here from Wrath of Rock 832. So we were talking about John Olerud was the best in 1993. The Blue Jays had the top 3 batting average hitters in Major League Baseball that year. Can you name the other 2?
I think so.
Go for it.
Paul Molitor.
Yep.
And Roberto Alomar.
Kid's got it. So, but yeah, I actually have that bobblehead on my mantle in the back room right now. The 3 of them holding the bats toward the camera and everything. It's a really cool bobblehead.
That's a great picture too. The photo of the 3 of them.
So that my question, I guess I'm going to have to deep dive. That might be the only time that a team's done that. Had the top 3 hitters in the American or National League.
Did the Tigers do it, or did the Tigers challenge when one of those times Miggy? I mean, they had Trammell and they had a few other really.
The Miggy team that you're talking about. I wonder if Miguel Cabrera and Maglio Ordonez were really close that one year. If they had a third person, those 2 batted like 320, 330 at one point.
I don't think anybody's done the top 3.
Yeah, top 3
seems really ridiculous.
In the whole league, top 3 guys in the whole league happen to be on the same team hitting in a row.
Monstrous. There's a reason that we just destroyed people that year.
And it's no wonder Joe Carter got to swing with a lot of guys on base.
Yeah.
But to my earlier point, his job wasn't to be top 3 in the league in batting average. His job was to swing hard when those guys are on base.
Yep.
I feel like that's becoming a bit of a lost art, is the, and it's interesting you would bring it up, because one of the things that I've noticed, and not just from the Jays, but more from the Jays than I've noticed this before, is the get the guy in. I mean, it's been like, I've been quite surprised. I've actually had friends text me watching Jays in 30 and be like, have you noticed that they're just looking to hit the guy in, and they go in and they're taking their high five, and as they go in, they're like, I'm like, yeah, they used to do that in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, when people were interested.
Bring that back.
Yeah, they like it's and they do a lot of not getting guys. A lot of guys dying at third. But they get on sometimes. They're not. Maybe this is the impact of the shift, like kind of being gone. That like you're just not trying to hit dingers into the side of the field anymore. You can get a little more small ball, which is way more fun to watch. Because
which I'm not sure if either of you have seen what the new Blue Jays hitting coach is preaching, but he's trying to be the most creative run-producing team in baseball this year. Is his goal.
Score your runners, boys.
There's been some fun to that. Yeah, got to get them around the pillows. That's the whole point. not to sound too John Madden from football like, but you got to put the points on the board, otherwise you don't win the game.
Yeah, I think I love that kind of baseball that I grew up on, where there seemed to be much more defined roles, right?
Yep.
Some folks would take the mid '90s Indians lineup, right? They were one of the greatest offenses, I think, of their era. You had Kenny Lofton at the top, another guy who fell off the Hall of Fame ballot his first year.
So underrated.
Yeah, Nepta, Kenny Lofton for sure. But in the 2-hole, hitting behind him, you had Omar Vizquel, who by today's, lineup construction norms would be hitting last if he could be in the lineup at all, right? He had like a 70 something, 80 OPS plus, not really a threat to go yard or anything, but he was one of the best bunters, and he was a very good situational ball player. And back then, with these sort of more defined roles, they would put this guy who was probably the worst pure hitter on the team in the 2-hole, and he'd wind up getting a lot more plate appearances than Manny Ramirez, who's hitting 7th back then, and Jim Tomei, and all these guys with just they had like Eddie Murray. They had Dave Winfield at one point.
Hall of Fame.
Like, yeah,
Yep.
like these big bats, but you have Omar Vizquel getting an extra how many plate appearances a week because they really bought into this whole Lofton gets on, steals second, gets bunted to third, and then you just need somebody to hit a fly ball and suddenly you have a run. That doesn't happen anymore. And part of it is that pitching has gotten so nasty and guys throw so hard and with so much movement that the chance of you successfully executing a hit and run has gone down. The chance of a bunt or stringing together a bunch of singles, that's all less likely now than it used to be. So, the only way you're for sure going to score a run is if you hit a ball over the fence. And so that's why so much of the approach has changed, and you have guys striking out 200 times a year and then still getting monster contracts because power always plays, and you don't get to see the number 4 and 5 starters of 30 years ago, where you knew that every 5th day you were at least going to get to see somebody who threw 80 miles an hour for 7 innings. And hopefully, put up some crooked numbers. It's just everybody throws hard. Everybody throws with a ton of movement. And so maybe teams overcorrected. I don't know if we're going to come back to more of like a small ball style. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's going to depend on whether teams feel like it's a viable way to score runs. Like they have these huge data analytics departments that are crunching numbers all day and trying to figure out what's the most worthwhile style of ball. And it's not always in line with what's the most aesthetic to us as fans.
So I got a good one here in the chat for some guys that throw some gas in Blue Jay history that you had just alluded to here. Wayne Ward, Tom Hankey. Some guys that in today's era of baseball could go out there and air it out and, terminate a few batters.
Oh, I love the Terminator name drop, of course. Hankey's nickname. He was a Nepta guy for sure. I definitely posted about Hankey, and I think he did really well. He was very popular. With the glasses, he just looked like a physics teacher on the mound and threw 100 miles an hour. And just there's nothing more 80s than Steve to Hankey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then see that point it played because, talk the best slider in baseball history. You could probably easily put Dave Steve on that list.
Yes.
Pitch Ninja always does stuff on him, and watching what they do on him every once in a while is slightly obnoxious, watching the ball break the way it does. You have that, and then you have Hankey come out of that bullpen and just mow through somebody. It's night and day different.
Yeah, I always felt super lucky to have been able to see those two in their prime. It's the same as Maddox and Smoltz, like being able to see those guys in their prime doing what they do. There's very few, that have ever done it as well. And I mean, Ward and Hankey were amazing, both of them.
Both hard throwers.
Yep. Think Wrath of Rock must be following your stuff, my friend, because he's saying you had 104,000 views for Tom Hankey a few months ago.
Oh, nice. And Hankey also, by the way, he played for the Texas Rangers later on, and he surrendered the last home run ever hit at the old Arlington Stadium, which was hit by Gary Gaetti. So
there it is.
There you go.
Is that
I went there once.
Just saying.
You went to Arlington Stadium?
Yeah, it was a great stadium. I went way back. I was on a business trip in Dallas, and we did the drive all the way out there. We actually watched the Yankees and the Rangers play, and it was a night game, and I mean, it was just breathtaking. It was at a beautiful stadium, great grub for back then. It was ahead of its time based on that, and I feel like, I think they do a lot of stuff well in Texas when it comes to that stuff, and it was a great ballpark to watch a game in.
Well, I'm glad to hear it was a night game because I've heard it was brutally hot there otherwise.
Yeah.
I think that's a reason their new ballpark kind of looks like a grill from the air. Just saying.
Yeah, but
And a Dr. Pepper.
That it does.
Yeah, there it is. So, I did want to do a couple of deep dives on some players. I did notice that you already did the Jeff Fry name drop a minute ago. You also
now wait a second. Hold on, Craig. Hold on.
Go ahead.
This is breaking news. While this was happening, Jeff Fry responded to me on Twitter. So we owe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hi,
people
Jeff,
are listening
and enjoying.
Thank you.
So on that note, still the only Blue Jay to hit a cycle within the confines of the Sky Dome. There's a few other great names on that list, and Kelly Gruber.
He didn't even know. Kelly Gruber was like, people were cheering for him, and he's like, I don't know why they were cheering. I had no idea why. And then they told me to hit the cycle, and I was like, okay, yeah.
No, game on.
He did more than that.
So
I mean,
Kevin Biggio is the only other one to have hit the cycle for the Blue Jays.
Kevin,
so go ahead.
Poor Kevin. He's not very good at baseball sometimes.
I was just going to say,
his was on the road.
Our old partner Kenny would have been. This was right up his alley. He was a big Kelly Gruber guy. But I mean, as a Blue Jay fan, I have often found it hard to find a guy that I liked more than Kelly Gruber that played for the Jays. I mean, he literally did everything. He was a Jays Jay. He was a man of the people. I still have a picture. He was my grandmother's favorite baseball player, hands down.
He was a babe. He was a total babe. Let's all be honest.
I still have a picture, and you guys know I have the painting over there of him stopping Ricky from getting the record. It's a super famous painting of Kelly Gruber tagging out Ricky Henderson. It's one of my prized possessions. But to Kelly Gruber's, and Kelly, I know we're trying to get our hooks in you to get on the show here. But my grandmother, when Kelly Gruber was trying to make a comeback, he played for the Vancouver Canadians. He played 3 games here. Kelly Gruber came out of the dugout and spent 20 minutes talking to my grandmother about, she had just said, hi, Kelly, big fan. And she was, I don't know, she's probably in her 80s at that point. And he took the time to walk around. There's all these kids with their stuff out. He's like, yeah. I don't have time for that. And he talked to me, just sat. I have a picture of it. The photographer for the C's got a picture of it, and I have it. And
that's so precious.
She was like, he was such a nice, honest man. And he was like, do you want me to sign a ball? She's like, no. I just want this. I just want to talk to you. And
that's so amazing.
It's such a cool moment for me. I've had a few really cool. I was taken onto the field by Johnny Bench when I was a little kid. I've had some pretty cool ones. But that ranks up there. And when you're thinking about Kelly Gruber, the other thing to think about, and this would be so much fun if they brought this back. Do you guys remember? It wasn't the Battle of the Network Stars. They used to do a thing where all of the professional sports you would do competitions, like they would do like not pole vault, but you know what I mean? Like they'd run and they'd jump and Kelly Gruber won it twice. Like of all of the athletes that were involved in this, he was considered to be the best athlete. And I'll always remember that. It was such a cool thing. I can't remember. I'll find it on the internet.
Oh, those clips would be gold, bud. So my thing, I'm just going to throw it in. I did come by Kelly Gruber's marijuana one time when he was leaving Canada and couldn't bring it over the border. And I gave my Kelly Gruber joint to my brother for Christmas. And like, honestly, like it may be everything, even baseball card included. The best baseball moment that I have is Kelly Gruber's weed.
That's incredible. I mean, what are the chances?
Yeah.
So Kelly Gruber's story that I heard is in 2001 when the day that Jeff Fry hit for the cycle, Gruber was in Toronto for something completely unrelated. And when Jeff was like 3/4 of the way through, they called him and they're like, yo, another Blue Jay's about to hit for the cycle. Can you get to the ballpark? And he just dropped what he was doing and showed up. And then I don't know if you've seen when Jeff finished the cycle, Gruber runs out on the field and gives him a hug. He wasn't even like planning to be there until the team called him and they were like, this could happen today. Can you get here?
Gruber vibes.
Gruber vibes, man.
Gruber vibes.
I will say that, Gruber has been in a bit of problems in the Toronto media, but I still love him dearly for what he's accomplished. And I have his autograph on my fridge. So
there you go.
Gruber. Love the guy.
Do we know what position Biggio was playing the day that he did it?
Second.
Had to been second.
Because the other two were both playing third.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our infielders are the only ones that can hit cycles. And we can only come within one out of a no-hitter.
Just one.
Yeah.
Saw two last year.
Yeah, well, we saw almost two, right? Right? Don Francis.
Steve could have easily had like 5 no-hitters.
Yeah,
and nobody else would have any.
Exactly.
He could
have been right up there with Nolan Ryan if he only got 5 more outs on certain days.
Yeah. Spread it out. It's almost nothing.
He had a lot of bad luck too. Like when you look back at some of those games where he was rushing a no-hitter, you look at the plays that unfolded to make them happen, and you can see him standing on the mound just like, really, we're gonna do this again.
No.
Like it's gonna go off the glove and hit this guy in the face and then roll down here. That's what's gonna happen, really. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Seemed like a good dude.
Our talk with Jamie Campbell last year, the guy's camping under it and it hits a fucking seagull.
Yeah.
And that's why baseball is both the greatest and the worst. Like the game giveth and taketh away, and it's unlike any other sport, and it's the only one that I follow, but I'm deep in it. I can't not think about baseball.
That's it. It's like it's so scrambly, and I always say like people are like, Canada is a big hockey nation, and I'm always like, hockey, whatever. Imagine if you could score 4 points at once. Like you could do a mega goal that could upend the entire game. And not only that, but imagine if like it's really scrambly, right? So it's like anything can happen at any time, but also like it's just luck. And also they'll be like, oh, we don't know that rule. It's common in baseball. Well, everyone will be like, we don't know that rule. We don't know that rule. And I'll just have to like come together, and they've got to like go back into the baseball history books and like consult with one another about what is the correct protocol here, because this has never happened before. That's magic.
There's also no other game where people in the stands are scoring. Like, I mean, there's no other game on the players. Nobody goes to Wimbledon to watch tennis and they've got a piece of paper and they're like, oh, love 15. You know, like it just doesn't happen. Like the game is, I always think about it. And every time, like I was literally just buying spring training tickets right before we came on. And I was thinking to myself, where do I want to sit in case something cool happens?
Yeah.
And I've been to lots of hockey games, and any sport can provide that. And I don't know what it is about baseball where every time you go, the anticipation of something cool, a triple play, a grand slam, a guy stealing, 2 bases, an inside the park home run. Those things are all, like magically around, and it's the tension and all of the rest of it before the game gets going, and then you're like, oh, we're 3 innings in. Have they had a base runner? And then everyone's like, whoa, they haven't had a base runner. And then you get
you get drawn in.
Don't say it. Nobody say
it. So my wife sway around these unwritten rules about how you shouldn't talk about it. She'll be like, hey, he's throwing the kind of game you don't talk about.
I love that.
So
well played.
I've adopted that. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I got one from our wonderful friends in the chat that actually are joining in our fun here on Dave Steve. I did look it up. It's close. It's Cubs. Dave Steve's book isn't called Someday I'll Be Perfect. It's Tomorrow I'll Be Perfect. And the thing that I just thought was even crazier is he wrote that in 1986.
Oh,
yeah.
So there was an eventual someday, tomorrow, whatever the hell you want to call it, that actually was the perfect or damn close to it.
One of my favorite photos,
like a batter or two in that game too. So it's freaking wild.
One of my favorite photos of Steve is he got married at the City Hall in Toronto. It's him and his wife just standing in front of the City Hall in Toronto, having gotten married, and it's just so nice and like ordinary.
I think I remember hearing that he had really fallen in love with the city of Toronto, and it became just an unbelievably special place to him. And, the fans adored him and he adored them back. I don't think it always happens that way. And I'm really glad that for a pitcher of his caliber, who is so recognizable as a Blue Jay first and foremost, that he would get married there, that he would just have such an affinity for the city his whole life.
Correct me if I'm wrong, he was actually our announcer for a few years too, right? He did the TV feeds for a while on TSN, didn't he?
I feel like he was involved at some level. He might have been sort of like before they did the Sports Next where they cut away from it. I think he did some of that stuff, and he did some light wet work for them, but nothing. I don't know if he called games. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's anything's possible.
I just remember seeing him all, done up, ready to go, which looked odd because I just feel, just the mustache and the long hair and, getting dirty.
Yeah, an iconic mustache guy.
Love a good mustache.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
What are your favorite Toronto Blue Jays mustaches? Let's go around with this.
Who's starting? You start.
You start, Liz.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to go with the modern one. And the reason why I'm going with a modern Toronto Blue Jays mustache is because my nephew really likes it, and he wears a mustache. He's 8. He'll wear a mustache about it. And that's David Schneider, because he's bringing back the mustache, because I love a good, handsome mustache man, like straight up. And so it's not ironic and it's not dirty. It's a handsome mustache. Like you can wear that mustache to a wedding.
I like it.
So I'm gonna go Rance Mullenix because there's something about the giant monster glasses and then having the fuzz.
I think I gotta. It's so ironic that it came up in the chat from Michael. I agree. George Bell. George Bell had a sweet duster, just lip lettuce. It was amazing.
How has nobody said Pat Henkin?
Yeah, his was good too. He was dirty.
That was a fun
Pat
one.
Henkin looked like he drank a chocolate milk right before he came out for every game.
Yes.
It was patchy and terrible. He looked like a bird picked at it. It's so bad, but he was so good. He had that. And Pat Borders had a good one too for a while, and he had that. Pat Borders had more chew than any human should ever put in their cheek, and he'd have that little tilted mustache going. It's awesome.
Yeah, one of my other stupid favorite ones was Sal Fasano. Always had that really odd shaped goatee.
Oh
yeah. The boys just taught me about that mustache, I think last week, and I was really shocked about it.
There's some amazing.
David Wells is another one. Jack Morris in the chats. Now we've really started it up.
Yeah, we've opened up Pandora's mustache box. Wait, that didn't sound right at all. We'll cut that out later. Kids don't Google Pandora's mustache box.
No.
Bad. So, I wanted to talk about one of your more recent ones that I saw that Liz was kind enough to share and retweet back out with our show this evening for. Not enough people talk about Shannon Stewart. Oh my God. It was a whole generation of Blue Jays he was the staple in that lineup, that it was the catalyst, that igniter at the top of the lineup for a team that if the Yankees and the Red Sox weren't the Yankees and the Red Sox of that era, the Blue Jays could have maybe done something fun.
Yeah, he was. I mean, talk about an underrated guy. I mean, when I think of Shannon Stewart, the first thing I think about is him being fast because he had that year with 50 steals. But if you look at his numbers, he was actually a lot more than just a base stealer. And he wasn't a base stealer all that long, but he stayed a great hitter through his entire career. And I don't think people realize that he was hitting like, almost 40 doubles a year every year, hitting 300 most years, and a pretty good left fielder in his youth too. I mean, I don't think he gets that much credit defensively, but even for these Blue Jays teams that weren't winning a whole lot, he scored 100 runs or more 4 years in a row and 90 more, I think, like 6 years in a row. So he was really getting it done at the top of the order, and I mean, didn't strike out much. Again, that's something that sort of has been deprioritized in recent times, but he was a strikeout avoidance guy for sure, who hit for high average, ran well, fielded well, and I'm surprised that he just never seems to come up at all. Even among like late 90s nostalgia people like us, it's just he gets no
I
credit.
Was straight up like, I pulled one of those, who is that man? And then I got really interested in that man, and I checked him out. But then also I think somebody on the Twitter was like, I met him in a strip club. He was really nice. And I was like, that's a good man.
I saw that. Yeah, talking baseball at the strip club with Shannon Stewart for 20 minutes, and then something about like, oh, he went out of his way to say goodbye to me at the end of the night. And it's like, these real life vignettes are also so unique to baseball. Like, this would not happen anywhere else. Yeah. I just love it.
It is beautiful, right? Like, that's it. It's
you
nice.
Dust the glitter off each other and send each other home. It's a beautiful thing.
Beautiful thing.
Just tuck the dollar bills all the way in and be on your way.
Yeah.
Magic and memories, baseball. You got it.
No. But to that point, I felt like Shannon Stewart for the longest time, and especially after a player that came in a little bit riding on another team, the same model of player. He was Carl Crawford for the Rays before Carl Crawford had a chance to be the monster that he was for near the end of that career for Shannon Stewart. But same kind of player, like you mentioned.
You are so right. I had not thought about that, but that's an amazing comp. Both left fielders, both hit for a high average, both good base stealers, both hit a bunch of extra base hits, scored a ton of runs.
Carl Crawford just had the opportunity of being able to play in a World Series. That was really I'd say probably the big difference, because they famously lost to the Phillies that year with the monster that was Chase Utley and those guys.
And I have to think Shannon Stewart would have been a World Series juggernaut if he had the chance, because I know he got traded to Minnesota, I think, down the stretch, and had like a big run for them. And he could have been a great piece on a competing team. Just a very talented ball player.
And in the chat, Michael Borland is actually name dropping a guy I was about to name drop. I was a huge Reed Johnson fan for the Blue Jays in that same quasi era. Just a grinder. He had a season where he had 36 doubles and batted .319. It's freaking wild.
Did he have some kind of really famous catch, or did I make that up?
I would say it was Kevin Pillar a little bit before Kevin Pillar got to play with the Blue Jays. But it is what it is. So anyway, I think unless we have another story here, I think we'd be doing our Blue Jays fans a disservice if we didn't talk a little bit about spring training before the hour's over.
Wait, I want to talk about Vernon Wells first. Wrath of Rock was like, what about Vernon Wells? It's like, yeah.
What about Vernon Wells?
Let's talk about Vernon Wells.
He was great. Yeah. He was a great player. He was like probably the best player on the team at his peak, right? I mean, he was like a 30-30 guy, winning Gold Gloves in center field, hitting 300. I don't think I've done a post about him, but if I haven't, I should.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys, though, that was so sneaky good that it just happened. Like he would just do it. He'd be like, he hit another double. Oh, he hit another home run. And maybe a great catch in center. Like, I mean, he seemed so effortless all the time. And when that happens, I feel that way about Roberto Alomar sometimes too, where he was so effortlessly good, where you're just like, you look back and you're like, oh, he was way better than I even thought he was back then. And I thought he was great. So
yeah,
I remember it being to the point where people even thought he, like they questioned his effort and whether he was like trying, whether he cared. And it's like, I think the guy is just that good at baseball, like when you make it look too easy, people, they're like, nah, he's not trying.
He's not trying. And that was a part of Vernon Wells' story there a little bit too. And I always thought he was doing well, but some people every once in a while it'd be like, well, we lost that game because, our highest paid player, who was Vernon Wells at the time, didn't do something, whatever the something was. And it's like the man can't be on every night, to the point of what you mentioned, being a 30-30 guy, winning Gold Gloves and all that kind of stuff. That's baseball.
Don't you guys kind of feel the same way about Mike Trout? Don't you think that Mike Trout a lot of the time gets viewed as somebody who's just so unbelievably talented and isn't trying as hard as he possibly could be trying, based on the fact that his team is
Mike
so awful?
I do.
Like, it's when you guys were saying it, the first name that came into my mind was Mike Trout. I was like, Mike Trout. Like, I mean, that's
I tweet all the
Vernon
time.
Wells and Mike Trout. Yeah.
Yeah, I tweet all the time. I'm like, Mike Trout, should he be a Hall of Famer if he's just complacent on a stupid loser team? Sorry for all the Angels fans out there. I know, and then that's the thing. And then I say, okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still want him to get traded to a real team so bad.
Oh yeah, I think people had talked about him going to the Phillies, which was like his favorite team growing up and everything.
I can't even. Let's not even put that into play.
I feel like a player of his ability is frankly wasted on the Angels, and I've been tough on him at times. Like, there's no doubt he's unbelievably talented. The numbers speak for themselves. But when you have that kind of ability, when you have a contract that's that size, the expectations are so high. And ultimately what happens is, if you're better than everybody and you get paid more than everybody, people expect more of you than everybody. And if you go back over the last 8 seasons, he's averaging something like 97 games a year over the second half of his career. And, you might say, like, well, look at Anthony Rendon, by the way, who I called Tony Wage Theft. The guy,
well played.
$245 million contract, and he's never played more than 58 games in a year. And I had that tweet a couple weeks ago about how Ted Williams played more games during World War II while also fighting in it than Rendon has played during his 5 years with the Angels.
So good.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing going on at that time, though.
Yeah. So
No.
it's like the reason I bring Rendon up is, when you're in a situation like Anaheim, where winning is really not an option, the incentives to work back and return to the field quickly kind of go away. And so if you think about Mike Trout, who's this generational talent that gets hurt a lot, at some level you have to acknowledge that hurrying him back and risking further injury isn't going to change anything for the team. So, you're better off making sure he gets his health right and comes back fresh when he's ready. But, then what that means is you have this guy who over the last 8 years has averaged 97 games a year. And Tony Wage Theft has zero sense of urgency. He's got his guaranteed money. He's not trying to break a sweat getting back on the field. And it's unfortunate for the Angels, for their fans, for their owners, for the teammates, for all of them.
Yeah. I have the best comp, though, between those two gentlemen that you just mentioned, between Anthony Rendon and Mike Trout. Anthony Rendon gets in fights with fans when he's even at the game, during the game. I don't want him anywhere near fans or anything as an Angels, front office member, if I was one. Meanwhile, the flip side of that coin is Mike Trout, regardless, is still your ambassador of your brand as an Anaheim Angel. And he was, I don't know if anybody's seen the clip of him at the Topps Rip Night stuff the other night. But yeah, he paid for like a sign off the wall or something at that of him. autographed it and just gave it to some kid. And just
Yeah,
said, "Here
he
you
knows.
go, it's all
He knows he's
yours."
Mr. Baseball. Him and Judge know they're Mr. Baseball, and they do
100%.
Mr. Baseball things, and that's the best.
Yeah.
I would 100% root for Trout to come back. I hear he's moving to right field to hopefully ease the
gonna help.
burden. I'm rooting for the guy to come back, hit 300, knock 50 homers, and just do Mike Trout things. I wish he had a stronger supporting cast, but definitely root for the guy. I think he's good for baseball. He's good at baseball. He's good for baseball.
100%. And I'd love to see him get a crack somewhere else, even if it's a bit of a swan song. Like, I mean, I know that, you never want to, you never want to see teams get too loaded, but I mean, I feel like if anybody out there deserves a shot at the World Series once, I mean, it's him. Like it's getting to a ridiculous status where he's so good, and it's like you said, it's such a waste. So, I mean, cheers to him, and hopefully he can get healthy. And I don't disagree with the walk-off. I mean, he would be a great DH, and it would keep him healthier, and it would, all of those things would be the smart thing to do. I don't know if Mike would be okay with that. I feel like Mike feels like he's still got some gas in the tank. But here's to hoping, buddy. I hope
you saw it at the beginning last season. My brother and I drafted him, I think, 12th round in our fantasy baseball season. I'm like, is there really going to be anybody better in the 12th round than Mike Trout if he becomes Mike Trout? So we drafted him, threw him in our outfield, no bigs, and he went off to begin last season. He was on fire. It looked like 10-year prior Mike Trout, and then the unfortunate reality happened. So the man can still rake. You've got to figure out how to stay healthy. And that's what the team I'm hoping is trying to do with the right field thing, and see what happens.
He did set an interesting record last year before he got hurt. He holds the record for fewest RBI in a season with at least 10 home runs.
Okay.
That's
right.
interesting.
Baseball.
He hit
high risk.
10 homers and only had 14 RBI.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
nobody can get on base around him.
Paul Molitor in 1996 hit only 9 homers, but drove in 113 runs.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
For a certain team. I don't remember what team was that.
That was for the Twins.
Yeah.
That was the first year after he went. That's right. 95 was his last year with the Blue Jays. So daily walk-offs actually got an interesting comp as far as fantasy sports go for Mike Trout, and he's baseball's Christian McCaffrey.
Hey, lay off my 49ers.
That would be why I did it. So anyway, I guess we're just gonna forget about anything else tonight because we just had so much fun, and we're gonna have about 4 minutes.
We could dip. I'm the story I'm stealing. We can dip spring training 2 minutes. No.
Do it.
Okay.
Do it.
All right. Go ahead.
I haven't been watching it.
Go,
I haven't been watching it. I saw.
Okay, so here's my take.
All right.
I really, there was a mention earlier about the NL playing small ball. I really like the fact that Andreas Jimenez has given the Jays the ability to play small ball. This guy could be the biggest steal in the last couple of years. He's wearing number 0, which I absolutely love. I love a guy that wears 0 or 00. I think it's fantastic. He looks great. Bo's struggling, but the rest of the team around them looks pretty darn good. Like the outfielders
hit in April anyway.
Yeah, I know. The outfielders look good. Vladdy's looked good. Some of the prospects that are challenging look good. I mean, it's, I know that Craig, you and I've been through this a few times. I feel like I'm putting kid gloves on a little bit for this season just to be prepared. But I've been inspired to watch more baseball, and I don't know if I'm buying into spring hype, but I'm certainly getting tickles in places that make me feel good about spring.
Well, I'm in the best shape of my life this year. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I want to point out a fun one that I was actually reading into, and we've been getting like a bunch of the same question in our chat. So I'd be doing a disservice by not listening to our fans. And that's Alan Roden. He did anybody catch the view with Schneider the other night, or the day, I guess? That he was somebody asked him if he has a chance of making the team, and he's like, oh well, he's already doing mid-game interviews.
Yeah.
with James, with Buck and everybody.
Yeah.
So it was kind of odd. So that was a fun one. Jimenez has looked great. Aurelvis Martinez looks like he wants to steal a job from somebody.
Holy
So
crap, that
that's gonna
looks
be an
like
interesting one. Yeah,
he's got so much
and then
pop in that thing.
Yeah, he's my guy to
the
watch this year
biggest
for sure.
hindrance. The biggest hindrance to him at the moment is the fact that Ernie Clement is also having the best spring of his career.
He looks great. He so funny. A quick Ernie Clement. So he ran that infield single out. Was that yesterday or the day before?
I didn't see that.
And I'm sitting with my son, and I'm like, who's the new guy? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's Ernie Clement.
Who's that man?
It's
Right?
Ernie
I
Clement.
love that. Yes.
Who was
Rochester
flying down the
native,
line there?
Ernie
I'm like,
Clement.
way to go, Ernest. Ernest Von Clement.
Then ironically, Miles Straw has 3 hits. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I wonder how he's going to shake out. I mean, I would just nickname him, what was it, like International Signing Pool? That's my nickname for him. Like, there you go.
Good stuff. And then we actually got to see Mad Max just mow through hitters the other day. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Does he look like he's going to be vintage or what?
He's at least going to be vintage for however many innings we get out of him, it looks like.
I don't. It's too early.
Yeah,
But just
too
having
early.
them there, I get excited. I'm like, I
He
get
was
like
taking it very
tickle.
seriously.
Spring
Yeah.
tickle.
I definitely there's something nostalgic about him as one of the last remaining old school aces that is, he's the guy in every way, both in terms of like his stuff and in terms of the mentality. He's of a different era, and to have him rub off on younger pitchers, I think is going to be really beneficial beyond whenever he decides to hang it up.
And worst case scenario, one of our comments in the thing, he is a very high paid pitching coach at a minimum. So there is that.
Yeah, 15 mil
anyways,
for a pitching coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peanuts. We're already well over the damn luxury tax from our talk last week anyway. So, fifth highest paid team in the league at the moment, if I recall right. Wasn't that what I said last week?
Something like
Just
that.
get
Right.
over 500. Let's
Ballpark.
just be over 500, please.
Oh, love of God. So, not Gaetti, this is your moment to shine. Shameless self-promoting bit. Tell everybody where they can find you and all the fun that you're having on your account.
Oh, of course. Well, for shameless self-promotion, feel free to follow me on X at NotGaetti. I do the NEPTA posts. I do Random Huge Season. I do a couple of other recurring features. There's some recurring shtick that I think you will catch on to and really enjoy. I also do some long-form articles under the Articles tab on my profile. I call my column Not Gaetti at Large, which is an homage to the old at-large editors of hard copy newspapers who, rather than covering some specific beat, get to write on whatever topic they want to. And that's how I feel about baseball. I'll just sit down and pick something to write about. Those are between 1,000 and 1,500 words, so a little steeper than a tweet, but if you like a deep dive, those are there. And then, of course, there's all the Not Gaetti merch by the great Obvious Shirts, and link to them is in my bio, of course. So knock yourselves out with those. There's NEPTA stuff and classic Not Gaetti avatar things on there too. I love the logo. It looks like me. And so, that's
You're
my
definitely your own
shameless
character, my friend. We
self-promotion.
appreciate it.
Yeah, the hard hat is required.
Yeah. Well, you're taking shots. You're going deep and you're taking shots, right? Like, I mean, we get it.
happens.
We'll get a
Just
headlight
stay
for that.
safe.
We'll get a headlight for that thing.
I may never be as much of an icon as Liz, but
Let's see. You don't want to be,
We're
man.
getting there.
Just
Hey man, look, we
Well said.
live in her shadow every week. Every week we live in the shadow that bulge on her forehead was, and it's the weather's fine in here.
Oh, we couldn't have
It's
been-
fine.
That shot to the head unfortunately brought these goofballs all together, so that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, not
well,
bad.
it's
We
great.
did
You guys are doing a great thing, and I really enjoyed coming on here and talking ball with all of you.
awesome.
Come back.
Anytime you want to come back, come
Awesome.
on back.
Count me in.
Definitely. Well,
All right.
more obscure fun. I got one more interview question that I have to ask because this is a fun one in the chat, and you told us beforehand. Who the heck are the astronauts behind you?
Okay, so the Astrodome used to dress the grounds crew in astronaut costumes, and I really think that needs to come back. that's back when baseball was proper and Mike Scott did whatever he wanted to do to baseballs to make them move. And the grounds crew came out looking like that. So that's your answer. I miss it. Bring it back.
Have you guys ever seen
the eighth wonder of the world?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you guys ever seen well, I don't know if you guys ever seen a Vancouver Canadians game, but the grounds crew dances in the 6th inning or something like that. And as hokey and as corny and as awesome as it is, it's so much fun to watch. And they dance poorly. They're not good dancers. They're grounds crew. And so that's what makes it so cool and unique. But yeah, I'm with you, buddy. Bring it all back. Go nuts. Baseball's supposed to be fun.
And the bullpen car too, maybe.
Yeah, bullpen. I love the bullpen car.
As a Blue Jays fan, I'm just not gonna lie. I miss the world's fastest grounds crew.
No, it was only because we didn't have dirt base paths, so they could be real fast. They were just little patches. I just want to have some like scuzzy looking mascots race each other around. We haven't had that in a while.
Yeah.
It's not asking too much.
No.
Yeah, we have that in Vancouver too. That's a bunch of pieces of sushi racing against each other.
Yeah.
Except wasabi
we have the
cheese.
great wing. In Buffalo, we got the great wing race, and it's the chicken wing versus the celery versus the blue cheese.
Yeah, very similar. Very similar.
Beautiful.
Now I'm getting hungry.
Good deal.
All right, buds.
Yeah, no, I gotta get some food. But thank you very much, Not Guy Eddie. We appreciate you having you on tonight. We're gonna have to do this again sometime soon. Blue Jays fans, thank you very much for joining us in the chat and on the live show tonight. We always enjoy having you here. That's the whole reason we do this, is to have fun with all the Blue Jays community that we humanly possibly can on the barroom chat that is the Jaybird Watching Podcast. Make sure you listen in every Thursday evening back at our 6 p.m. Eastern time next week, 3 p.m. on the West Coast. Make sure you tune in and join that chat. And if not, you miss it, make sure you catch us wherever you can get your podcasting pleasures from, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it might be. And we will all see you next week. Go Blue Jays. Woo!
Thank you for listening to the Jaybird Watching Podcast. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch at BirdwatchingGC, and our YouTube channel. If you want to support the show and get extra content, please consider joining to our Patreon at patreon.com/birdwatchinggc. Go Jays, go.
Woo!